Let's start the show by talking about death and despair. Let's check this out. Highly processed foods are linked to early death, a new study finds. Around 57,000 premature deaths in Brazil in 2019 were associated with consumption of ultra-processed food, according to new research. So, on this show, I try to cover health. I try to cover food on this show. No one else does. I mean, I'm sure someone else does out there. I mean, in the multiverse, I'm sure, and so many people out there that do this kind of thing. But once again, 95% of Americans, I know this study is talking about Brazil, but I live in America and most of my audience is American. 95% of Americans do not eat fruits or vegetables on a daily basis. They don't eat fiber. They're fucking stupid. They don't know how to feed themselves. They need someone to do the airplane into their mouths because they're dumb. So, a growing body of evidence suggests that consuming too much highly processed food, items like hot dogs, chips, soda, and ice cream, can have consequences beyond obesity and high cholesterol. Wow, that's surprising. A study published Monday in the American Journal of Preventative Medicine estimated that in 2019, the deaths of around 57,000 Brazilian people between the ages of 30 and 69 attributable to the consumption of ultra-processed food. That amounts to more than 10% of the annual premature deaths in Brazil among the age group. So that's just 1 year, by the way. It's just 1 year. 57,000 Brazilians in 1 year. Dead. Bye-bye. The authors say their study is the first to estimate the impact of ultra-processed food on the risk of early death. The study used calculations from a previous analysis which compared the relative mortality risk of people who consume large amounts of processed food to those who ate relatively little of it. The authors applied the model to Brazil's population and levels of ultra-processed food consumption. From there, they estimated the number of premature deaths that might have been prevented if people between the ages of 30 and 69 had eaten less of that type of food. The researchers focused on this age group because the World Health Organization considers death from non-communicable disease to be premature at those ages. So if you die at 70, well, fuck you, bitch. You're old, so we don't care. But anyway, I talk about on my show processed food all the time. I'm not gonna lie. I've been slipping a little bit lately. I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. But, the ultimate thing that you need to remember is that 95% of Americans do not eat fiber. So as long as you're eating fiber, you're doing better than 95% of Americans. I'll tell you that much. That being said, again, ultra-processed food. One of the problems with the phraseology of ultra-processed is that no one knows what it means. I study this shit. I look into this stuff. I read books about this stuff. I look at articles about this stuff. I follow people and keep up to date on this stuff. I don't even know what ultra-processed means. Right? It just doesn't really mean anything. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible communication. I don't know why people insist on using the term ultra-processed, and what is the difference between ultra-processed and processed? I don't know. What's the difference between minimally processed and ultra-processed? Nobody knows. There's no standardized definitions for these words, and so they kind of don't really mean anything. But ultra-processed, basically, the way I can explain it to you, anything in a box that is not whole food, right? Pasta is processed, but it's not ultra processed, right? Ice cream is ultra processed, ice cream sandwiches, ultra processed, cereals, ultra processed. Each ingredient in this goes through multiple stages of processing. Pasta is, again, a little bit on the minimally processed side, stuff like, you can make a claim that like canned vegetables could be minimally processed, right? So, but ultra processed is all the bad shit. Chips, soda, the snacks, the treats, all the drugs that you get addicted to from an early age because you live in America or Brazil in this instance. Let's keep going here. Eduardo Nilsson, a nutrition researcher at the University of Sao Paulo, and the study's lead author, said he believes it is very likely that heart disease is among the main factors contributing to these premature deaths. Diabetes, cancer, obesity, and chronic kidney disease may play a role as well. Foods that are ultra-processed contain more artificial ingredients than those that just have added salt, sugar, or oil. They usually have very few whole ingredients and contain flavorings, colorings, or other additives. Instant noodles noodles, frozen pizza, and store-bought cookies typically fall within this category. Once again, I want to talk about food dye for a second here. Food dye, never necessary. Food dye, always pointless. Now, again, I understand people, I want my food to be green. If you want to eat, like, green eggs and ham or whatever, and you want to use food dye to make your eggs green or some shit, whatever, I'm not talking about you. But I'm talking about the fact that we put food coloring and food dye in almost all the kinds of processed foods, right? For example, red dye number 40, pretty fucking bad for you, linked to cancer. There are some dyes, did you know this? Some dyes that are manufactured from bugs. So a lot of people say, I'll never eat bugs. If you eat food dye, you're eating bugs. So have fun with that one. And so let's keep going. In Brazil, Nielsen said the ultra-processed foods that contribute to the most to daily caloric intake are mass-produced breads, cakes, and pies, margarine, salted crackers, cookies, meat products like ham, hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, and sugar-sweetened beverages, also known as SSBs. Nielsen and his collaborators estimated that if all adults in Brazil ensured that ultra-processed food made up less than 23% of their daily calories, the country might see around 20,000 fewer premature deaths per year. Most Brazilians are already below that threshold, but a quarter of the country's adult population gets up to 50% of its daily calories from ultra-processed food. Now, again, another thing about ultra-processed food is that the way, especially in America, I'm not entirely, sure about how it works in Brazil, but I can imagine and extrapolate based on my understanding of American culture. Ultra-processed food is typically subsidized by the United States government in the form of corn subsidies. Most ultra-processed food is created with corn or high fructose corn syrup, other kind of stuff. And so that is subsidized by the federal government. So the federal government gives these companies money to mass manufacture poison that they put in every food. And that's why foods that are poisoned, and when I say this, I mean it very specifically, it's poison. You're basically consuming Windex or anthrax just in a smaller dose. So once again, the U.S. government pays food companies to put poison into food, and that's usually the cheapest food that you can buy, which is poisoned. And so oftentimes you see people in lower income neighborhoods, whatever, again, in food deserts where the only food they can get is like 7-Eleven or a gas station, and they'll purchase these ultra-processed foods, again, that are manufactured cut with poison that will kill you over time, right? So again, and that's not an I'm not trying to be exaggeratory, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, it's poison. Corn syrup, sugar is poison. It's a drug and it's poison. Now again, I'd love to drink alcohol. In fact, you might not know this, I'm drinking alcohol right now. That being said, I'm aware that alcohol is poison, and I'm aware that if I consume too much of it, I will die. And so, as a result, I try to moderate my alcoholic intake. A lot of people, especially poor people, especially those that have lower levels of education, don't actually know that the food that they eat is extremely unhealthy for them. For example, bread. People think bread is just food, okay? Bread. Did you know that most bread in the United States of America, again, we can extrapolate to Brazil based on this study, they talked about bread as well. Most bread is basically created with massive amounts of sugar. A lot of bread is created with high fructose corn syrup. Why is that, though? Because it makes them more shelf stable, right? So, for example, it's not about someone baking bread and then eating it or giving it to the family or people buying fresh bread. Fresh bread is gone. There is no fresh bread. Sometimes you might go to a grocery store and see a bakery, but even then they put sugar and other kinds of shit in there to make it a little bit more shelf stable. And so what happens is, because these companies want to ship their bread, they put poison in it so that it's more shelf stable, so that when you buy it, you get poisoned. And again, if you eat enough of it, you will die. So I talk about this all the time. I don't want to freak anybody out. And again, it's not about being perfect. Never think, don't let perfect be the enemy of the good or whatever the fuck. For me, I try to eat processed food maybe a couple times a month, maybe 5 times a month. I'll try to eat something, I don't know about try, but, I'll be induced in a medically induced state of haze. And every once in a while, I'll purchase a processed food or two. But again, if you're eating stuff like this every single day, you're going to die. You are going to die. And now, again, I want to talk to parents out here. I love to say this. I was born and raised on fast food and ice cream. I had two parents that split up, right? And so I was raised by a single mother, and I would go see my father every once in a while. And the way that they would compete for which parent I liked the most was by buying me unhealthy food. Oh, ice cream, McDonald's, Burger King, French fries, all of it. Every time I'd get picked up, I'd get some, to go see my father, I'd get some unhealthy garbage. Every time I'd get picked up to go home, I'd get some unhealthy garbage. That's how they competed for my attention. And now I've got, debilitating issues and addiction issues for the rest of my life. So thanks a lot, parents. But again, to the parents out there that may be listening to this, it is incumbent upon you. You had a child. That's your decision. You made that decision. You have a child. Don't fuck that child up. Do not give your child shit like this every day, multiple times a week, whatever. A lot of parents give their kids juice every day. Did you know juice is soda without the carbonation? It's as unhealthy as soda. Just the only difference really is that it doesn't have carbonation. That's it. A lot of people think juice is healthy. Juice is not healthy. Juice is as unhealthy as Coca-Cola. And again, a lot of kids get juice every single day, right? So I'm just throwing that out there. It is incumbent upon you to, as a parent, make sure that your child is equipped to be successful in this world. And one of the things you can do to get your child at an advantage is to not saddle them with many, many, many dozens of food addictions like the average child has. Myself included. I have a food addiction that I will have for the rest of my life. So now I have to deal with that. I didn't make this decision. I didn't decide to get addicted to food. My parents forced it on me. I have a drug addiction, food, that I'll have to deal with for the rest of my life because of my parents. So again, if you're a parent, just be very cognizant of how you feed your children because it's extremely important. Food is not just food. Food is really fucking important, right? It is the most important aspect of your life, the food you eat. So, once again, all juices are not healthy for you. There's no such thing as a healthy juice. It's basically, you're giving your kid 2 cans of Coca-Cola every day because usually when people give kids juice, they give it in the tall glasses, they give them juice boxes, they give them multiple juice boxes. Again, it's the same thing as Coca-Cola. It's just sugar. Most of the time, juice is just high fructose corn syrup thrown in some like concentrated flavored like water, right? So again, it's all garbage. All trash. Eat some fruit instead, but whatever. That's my segment on healthy eating for today.